everybody, it's Altamir. Thank you for clicking on the video, and today we're going to be going over one of the ESO dev streams that they did recently, kind of about the Champions test, clarifying things for Cyrodiil, for the Cyrodiil test, and stuff like that. I have not pre-watched this, so I have no idea what kind of disaster this is going to be. So let's just dive right in, because I think it's actually pretty long. They said it would be 15 to 20 minutes, and ended up being around 30. So let's just get into it.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. Trying something a little bit different here. So we have been seeing a lot of questions about the Cyrodiil Champions test that's currently on PTS. Kind of how this differs from what we're going to be testing on live. You know, we kind of briefly talked about this in the last live stream where we were previewing what's in update 45. But we didn't really get into a lot of the nuts and bolts. So now that it's on PTS and we've seen people jumping in, there are quite a few questions that we've been seeing pop up pretty frequently. So we just kind of want to have this opportunity to go through and address some of these things, clarify if we can, and just kind of make the bed for a good testing. I was going to say testing week, but I guess weeks for what's happening right now. So we have Brian here, our lead combat and PvP designer. We have Rich, our game director for ESO. And we've just kind of jotted down some questions that we've been seeing. We want to just kind of take the time to talk through some of these things. We're not going to be covering other topics today. This isn't like a full ESO live or whatever. It's just us kind of hopping on and answering some questions about PvP in this test. I do also want to mention that we are still planning on doing the written Q&A that Jess has been pulling together. She pulled questions from forums and Reddit and what have you. So that is still happening. This is not taking the place of it. It's just in addition to the written Q&A. Oh, where are my notes? Here they are. All right. So let's just jump in. Just again, to set expectations here, we're planning only like 15, 20 minutes. Like this is going to be a pretty short stream. So,
well, depending on how long we talk.
Depending on how much you talk. Don't you have a meeting at 1:30
though? Maybe.
Okay.
But that's okay. Well, this is important. So
okay.
If we go long, they will understand.
All right. Excellent. Well, let's dive in.
Question where you are.
They'll be like, oh, you see him. It's right there. He's on the internet. All right. So first things first, I would like you all to clarify and just kind of explain what the goal of the test that's currently on the PTS. What is the goal with that test?
Yeah, for PTS, it's purely functionality. And I know that's a broad term, functionality, but it's looking at does it work, right? But when we say does it work, we mean like we need to kind of check everything, because as people have seen on PTS, there's a lot of stuff that's suppressed. And there's still some stuff that's like semi-suppressed. Like we know the quest pips show up, but when you talk to an NPC, it just goes, you can't do that in this campaign when you try taking the quest. So there's lots of things that are not normal and that are disabled that we need to make sure don't cause any issues with UI, don't cause any issues with your character. You can enter and leave Cyrodiil Vengeance just fine. You can use the siege weaponry that we give you. The abilities do what they say on the tooltip. That's really what we're focused on PTS about for this.
And it's also kind of at that next level. I mean, all that stuff has been tested internally, but internally is very different than externally, right? Like we can only get so many bodies in and testing internally. Bots sort of help, but not really. They don't replicate what a player does. And so the next level is onto PTS, but PTS doesn't replicate live, right? It's not a full pod. It's not a full server. It doesn't get near the population that we need in order to bog the server down in order to test. So like, it's just the next stepping stone before it goes live.
It's precautionary to make sure that when this does get to live, for when we do run that test in the end of March, that we're solid in spinning the campaign up, spinning the campaign down, bringing the other campaigns back up, that your character gets all the rewards that you're supposed to when you leave, when you get the XP and AP and the gold. So it's all about making sure functionally everything works.
Yeah. Real quick, I was wondering why there's so many emotes in chat, and it's because apparently emote only mode is on right now. So we're working on turning that. I was like, wow, so many emotes.
You're like, this is great. People were like,
There we go. Okay,
no.
it's off now. Sorry about that. I think it was left over
Here
from the
we
last
go.
from the last stream.
Oh.
Okay,
Oh,
so
now there's all this stuff going on.
Everyone
Okay,
can
I was
talk
wondering
now.
what
There we go.
emotes were. Yeah, okay.
There
it
we
was a lot of emotes, and I'm like, well, I guess this is
Yeah.
how people want
What's
to talk
going on?
today. All right, so
Why not?
I was being pinged on Slack too. People are like, "Did you know this is on?" Nope.
Emote only. Yeah.
Sure didn't, because it wasn't on for us earlier, so didn't even notice. Anyway, so I think hopefully that answer helped just kind of further clarify what it is that we're doing on PTS here. I do want to ask, what can players do to help us for the test that's currently on PTS? What would help you?
Get on there first off, but also submitting bug reports. We do get the bug reports. Phil and I have been actually going through some of the Phil's, the gameplay director lead, and there's we bounce back and forth. Some of these like, is this a bug? Is this a bug? So we do get those reports, but obviously also posting on the forums with screenshots, or if you're streaming videos with timestamps of things that you're like, is this how it's supposed to work? So that stuff absolutely helps.
Yeah. And just to be clear, when you're talking about bug reports that on the PTS, specifically for Cyrodiil, you're not looking for like, this ability doesn't seem to work. Like, you're looking for more like, my character lost its
yeah, all of
arms or
that.
something. Like,
All of that
that's
is
like
totally
what?
useful. Like,
Okay.
Yeah,
yeah,
if
like if an ability doesn't work, we want to know about it.
That was
we want to know.
that was a bad example.
Right.
I don't know.
But let's say, well, I mean, we have been getting some questions that people ask things like, falling damage, or, I was able to respawn. Is this normal? And it's some cases where people are, based on the feedback, it feels like and reads like sometimes we're getting feedback of people that are experiencing Cyrodiil for the first time. So they're asking things like, if I die to a guard, is that a PvP death? And it's like, yes, it's a PvP death.
Yeah.
So we are getting some of those things, which actually kind of informs some possible avenues for us to look at for messaging and information learning for people just in general about Cyrodiil. So any and all feedback is fine in that regard. If you're like, hey, is this what it's supposed to do? But, especially if something isn't doing what it says on the tooltip for an ability, absolutely. That's completely legit.
Yeah. So you touched on this earlier, but could you reiterate what the difference is between this test that's currently on PTS and what the test is going to be on live when that goes up?
I guess I did kind of jump ahead, didn't I?
That's okay.
all right.
That's okay.
Whoops.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, we need bodies. Like, that's the biggest thing, right? Live is the only realm that we can get everybody in there, right? And get the server under load, get the campaigns under PopCap, and get people in there and doing it. So that's why we have to do this test on live. And I've seen a lot of things about bots, and that's actually probably another question in there and whatnot.
I did have that question.
We do use bots, but they don't do what players do. And that's the thing. Right? They can't do what players do. They can't reproduce that level of interaction. They do very basic things for us, which is good and it helps, but it doesn't simulate the load. We can't simulate the load of hundreds of thousands of people on a server, right? So we have to do it on live. That's why we're doing it on live.
Yeah.
And we've done it before on live as well. Like, this isn't the first time we've done a live test. We've done lots of them. So
Yeah.
Plus one.
So once I guess the first question is, have we said when this test is going to be on live? Like, it's after after the update launches, obviously.
Yeah, it'll be the tail end of March. We're eyeballing the last week because it's in between PC and console. But the reason why we're kind of being nebulous about this is because things can go wrong. We may find something on PTS that fundamentally breaks characters. So that's why we're kind of like, it should be the end of March, but if something pops up, who knows? We may have to delay it a little bit, but we're trying to be cautious with this because, again, we're doing things that we don't normally do with the game in general with this.
Yeah.
So, and again, that's why we're being ultra cautious on PTS, and we want to get as many bug reports and information that everybody has for this. We've, like Rich said, we've ran it through the ringer pretty heavily internally with our QA team as well as various devs and even our engineers. We've all been in there messing around with this thing. I've been doing weird stuff like Alt F4ing the game mid combat and crashing my computer and yanking my network cable. I've been doing all kinds of that stuff to be like, hey, can my character get messed up? And thus far, it's been good.
Yeah.
And, but I'm just one person, and our QA is just, such a smaller team compared to the masses that play the game, which again,
the wide world, right? Like,
yeah,
exactly. And I think I've said this before, the second we put it onto PTS with the number of bodies that go in there, it's orders of magnitude more testing hours in the first hour that it's live on PTS. It's just, we can't compete with that level of interest on PTS. So,
yeah. And we were talking about having this test on live once it actually goes up about a week, right?
Yeah. Like a Monday to Monday kind of thing. We had talked at one point doing like a Thursday to Tuesday, but with the launch of 45 on PC, then the launch on consoles, trying to squeeze it in there with the various uptime and downtimes. That's the other thing too. We need a downtime for the campaigns to get spun back up. And that's one, spun down and then spun up. Like, to be completely safe, we need the downtime for that. Like, we can always fire off a campaign like we have during like mid-year, where we're like, okay, we need another campaign running. Let's fire one off. Launching a new campaign's okay, but whenever we got to close one, we absolutely need downtime for the proper processes to run to ensure rewards get gifted and all that stuff. And in both of the cases of the campaign going up and coming down, like, we're going to need to spin down the other campaigns, spin this one up, and then flip that. So that's why we're looking at a Monday to Monday when we usually have that type of downtime.
Yeah, that makes sense. One other thing I just want us to clarify, what's currently on the test server on PTS, that is going to be what we are using for the live test that you were talking about later in March, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We're running it through the PTS paces right now. We have some known issues with some abilities doing things that they're supposed to do or not supposed to do. We have some traits that are still existing, like everything from the known issues. So it's going through the standard PTS cycle in terms of treating it like a fully fledged feature, which, to be clear, this is not. But we are treating it. I was
just about to say, you better clarify that, because it's not a full
We are
feature.
treating it right. We are treating it like it is, giving it the full attention for each cycle through PTS, stepping it through the iteration. And again, like we just said there, this is not a full feature. So if ever there's a question like, well, is this what it's going to look like, for all time? No. This is.
How do you define full feature in this case?
Oh, geez.
Well, just look at what's on there. Like, literally all there is a character and abilities. Like, it's simplified. Everything is simplified. The player power, right, is all flat. It's based off, there's no crazy calculations that go on behind like we currently do. There's no inventory. There's no cosmetics. There's no quests, right? Like, we sacrificed a lot to get down to the lowest common denominator to prove out the hypothesis of this test, which is complicated abilities are causing that problem. And we arrived at that, right? We arrived at that because of all the tests we've done previously, right? And we've said this, many times, turning off CP, turning it on, turning group healing on and off, right? We did a lot of those kinds of tests. And so this is the next one in that series of tests for us. Took a while because there's tech and abilities and all the other stuff, but we got there and we're ready to run the next test.
So is there a world where, let's say, after the test that we do on live next month, could there be future tests where maybe we start reintroducing different elements of the game just to kind of see how it affects things?
Well, I want to clarify something real quick. Next month is February, not March.
Is it? Oh my God.
Yeah, just calling, just
That's
making
why-
sure,
Still
making sure there's no
January, Gina.
confusion.
Oh my
It's
God.
still
What year
January,
is it? Thank you. Sorry.
Just making sure. 'cause
Where
some
am
people
I?
are like, wait. You said next month and it's January. Yeah.
Oh,
no,
boy. Yes. In my brain, we were in February and I knew it was
Right.
March. Anyway, yes. Thank you.
I mean, the answer to that is really it depends. And I know that's kind of a cop out, but like if the test goes extremely well and we get the performance we want, then we have a direction we want to go. Right. Which is, looking more into that and re-enabling things and digging into that kind of stuff. If it doesn't go well, then we have a whole other thing that we have to go back and look at. And going well isn't just performance based either, right? Like if players absolutely hate this, we're going to have a think on it. We have to, right? It doesn't make sense to build a thing that everybody hates, which is one of the things I see on the forums a lot and on Reddit a lot is, oh, they're just going to do this anyway. So why would we even care? It's like, well, no, we care about PvP. We want to do it right. We want to get people engaged and happy. This has been one of the number one complaints about the game for a long time, which is performance isn't good. And all of the stuff we've done up to this point has had an immense impact on improving it, but it's still not where it needs to be. So this is the next step.
Yeah.
And even any sort of like presumption of what the final form of this would look like based on PTS is probably folly at this point. Because I mean, we could, at one point in time in this discussion, we had talked about not doing classes at all, just doing, everybody uses one character. Like that is the ultra heavy-handed, oh my God, no identity whatsoever. And we knew that there was going to be still a desire for people to still like play their class, have some familiarity with them. So that's why we have just class abilities for now to start, because at that level, that's the lowest common denominator we can get to. That each class has versions of their abilities that still look and feel like them as best as we could. But probably branching into another question about balance is we still had to make some concessions in that territory. Like looking at it's off the cuff, like the Templar, if you look at their abilities between Adric Spear and Dawn's Wrath, they got a lot of ranged direct damage with a lot of stuff on the side. Like it does majors and minors, or it does a snare, or it does a knockdown. And so if you start boiling those abilities down and go, okay, well, how can we make them as simple as possible, but still have some variety within the class? That's where we have some cases where things, like Javelin is just crowd control. That's it. We know normally there's damage and all this other kind of crap, and passes aren't on there. But again, like we understand that there are concerns about class balance in general with this, and we did do a proper pass with cost versus efficacy, like we do with all of our abilities. We looked at the stats that we're giving people and did a balance pass in that regard, but again, this is a test where we're like, let's get this as performant as we possibly can, and that was our primary goal. But we still had balance in mind with this for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good comment, right? On that is it is a test. It's not meant to be perfect. It's not meant to be final. And it kind of goes back to some of the things that Matt called out in his end of year letter, right? Which is we want to get more agile. We want to build things quicker. And the whole point of this test in its smallest form is if we're going to fail, we want to fail early and not spend 2 years of development building all of this and go, well, that was wrong. We just wasted 2 years. So that's the other big part in this equation that I don't think people fully grok. Like they read the lines that Matt had in there and like, well, what does that mean? Right. This is a good example of that, where we're going through and we're trying to do it faster. We're making concessions in order to go faster, knowing that it's not going to be perfect, but at least we get something out and we can test it sooner rather than way later. And then, like I said, waste a bunch of time.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. You all keep talking about performance and how we want to improve performance, and that's kind of what we're looking for. But what exactly are we looking for when we run this test?
What does that mean?
Like what?
That's fair. That's fair.
You're gonna look at a chart and be
graphs.
like, it's good now. So
To a degree,
Yeah.
you're real close to that. Yeah, we have charts that we look at where we can see the server frames, and we can see we measure that with the population. So we see population graphs and we see server frames at the same time lined up against each other, and we can see when population goes up, server frames start to, imagine.
You want to
like,
explain what server frames means? I know you have before, but
yeah, so server frames is like how fast the server can process information that is getting sent to it, and there's only so much that a server can do in a frame, similar to how you have client frame rate, client FPS. So just the same as when your client has loads of add-ons going on, you're in a population dense area, and you're trying to crank out as much animation canceling, weapon swapping, dodge rolling, and all the other stuff that you do. Like, your client starts to bog down because it's trying to keep up with the inputs that you're giving it. You're telling the computer, yo, I want to know all this information, and the computer can only process but so much. It's sort of the same thing on the flip side, where the servers can only process but so much in a given time frame. One of the things that Ed Tafo told me, God knows how long ago, back when I was pretty ZOS, we were like, yeah, even electrons need to obey physics. So like all the information going from your client to the server and back, it has to still obey physics in that case. And that's why we use frames, because there's only so much information that can be passed through per frame. And so when you experience lag, it's like, okay, well, hold on, I needed more time to figure that stuff out. So we can see that in a graph. We can literally see the server taking more time to figure out that information. And that's when you guys experience lag or experience connection issues or intermittent problems in that regard, because it goes, oh crap, this is a big spike in information that just came in, likely due to a big brawl or a big battle where everybody's coming together and abilities are getting hammered on the server. So we can see those things, and we're hoping that we can have a population that got higher than our last test, as well as server frames being in
lower and less
in the
spike.
green zone. Yeah,
lower and less
where
spike,
engineers
right?
don't yell at us.
Right.
Right. One other question that I see pop up pretty frequently. You may not have an answer for this, and that's okay. I think a lot of players are assuming that, let's say we get the results that we're happy with for this live test, we're just going to move forward, and that's going to be the new Cyrodiil.
With this, the way it is right now, no.
It's
No,
totally
the
not
way
ready.
this is right now,
No.
because again, like, we have so much stuff suppressed. You don't get, we still want to allow you to get progression, get some gear. Like, we still want this to be part of the game in general as a whole. And ESO is what we always talk about this internally. It's one game, whether there be PvP players, Battlegrounds, Imperial City, trial runners, just people running around crafting. It's all one game, and we want it to be cohesive. And right now, the way that this is set up, it is not that at all. Purely, again, for performance reasons, to try and get as much information and data as we can, with it being as bare bones as possible. So, again, what we see on PTS is, and when it does get to the live
That's
test,
the best way to explain it, right?
it's a test. Yes.
Yeah, and I
We
think
said that a couple times. But
once we run the full test on live in March, not next month.
There you go.
We do intend on following up with everyone and just kind of going, we need to talk about what next steps are, but then we'll share all that with everybody else too, and let you all know what the next steps are, what you can expect.
Yeah, I mean, Cyrodiil's it's going to go back to normal when the test is over. All the campaigns are going to be up. There'll be the CP, no CP. You can just come in, your characters will be fine. Like, what we're hoping, again, after the end of that week test, is we sit together and then we chat about the data that we got, as well as the feedback that you all have from the forums, as well as any bug reports and stuff. So, again, what you see on PTS is definitely for the test, sure, but like any
It's not a
form
full
of
feature.
yeah,
It needs a lot of work to become a full feature. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Hopefully this helped. I see people in chat saying that, they understand now, and hopefully, this little chat just cleared some things up. That's all this was intended to be. Just want to reiterate that we are still going to be doing the written Q&A. It is in progress. It is long. It's so long. We got so many questions. We're actually breaking it up into 2 parts. So the first one will be specifically focused on Cyrodiil champions and this test. And, we know there's a lot more questions than what we just covered here. And a lot of the questions we're answering in the written Q&A will go into more detail about some of the nuts and bolts with this stuff. But this was just kind of clearing up some of the more common questions we've been seeing, some assumptions that were incorrect. So hopefully that helped. For anybody asking about drops, drops are on through next week. We are participating in Twitch Drops Fest, so you can watch any ESO streamer and get some of the items that we have. It's an XP scroll, a costume, and a mount. So after we're done with this stream, you can watch another ESO stream, and it'll keep working towards your progress towards those drops. Anything else that you guys want to touch on before we go offline?
Get on PTS. Give us as much info as you can.
Yep.
Yeah.
Play it. Give us feedback. That's the most important part, right? We see a lot of theory crafting, and that's fine, but we need people to jump on and play it and give their feedback. So
Yeah.
And again, the abilities are they are different, and that's again consolidations we had to make. We can't just have a class have 4 28-meter DDs and that's it. That's not going to fly, which is why you can see some variance in the abilities with their functionality. So, but again, get in there, test out siege weaponry, test out repairing, make sure if you do think that there are discrepancies between your character going in and leaving, screenshot yourself, going in your inventory, your stats, go into Cyrodiil, run around, and then when you leave, screenshot that and post like a before and after. If you think there is something wrong, we need to know that stuff. So again, internally, the gang's been running this through the ringer, but like we said earlier, magnitudes of testing greater as soon as this goes on PTS. So it's always appreciated.
Cool. Well, thank you to both of you for just taking the time out of your day to answer some of these questions. Again, we will be following up with a written Q&A in the coming days.
Soon.
I actually am not sure where it's at in the process. But that'll be coming soon. The test is going to be we'll call it the functionality test. We'll be running on PTS throughout this whole PTS cycle, and we'll follow up with everybody when we have an exact date of the live test, when we really want everybody jumping in and just giving everything a try.
I'm pretty sure we're going to be shutting down Vengeance on PTS for PTS 5. I think.
Okay.
That was our
just
our
to
last
test that
check-in.
functionality too. Yeah.
Just to make sure that all works at the exactly. So
cool. Good to know.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks to both of you. Thanks for everybody who tuned in to watch. Hope this helped, and hope everybody has a great weekend.
Later.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So, first of all, I want to really say that I love the increased communication so far. It really just seems that it wasn't just words. Originally, before I knew that this stream even took place, this video was actually going to be covering a couple of comments that Kevin left on the forums, kind of some of this, and then I saw in a forum post that he had posted this, and I was like, oh, I will check out this live stream and see what happens. So, I mean, I think they just need to keep this up. If they want to improve their image and communication, this is what they need to do. Like, I'm not even doing, they just need to keep going on this road. I still think that they need to improve on a few different things. Giving us a little bit more information on an update would be fantastic. maybe even an idea like, oh, we're going north, or it's going to be sunny, or it's an island, or it's another realm, or whatever. The first season has to do with another realm. Ooh, give us something to chew on, give us something to do, because right now all we're doing is just waiting and waiting and waiting. Meanwhile, other games are coming out with other updates. You got Enshrouded just dropped another update. um you have Avowed right around the corner. Dragon Age is still out there. All these other different games in this particular genre, and you don't want to screw around and lose people because, well, I want to have fun. Basically, it's like what it comes down to, right? But I will say that they really it does make they are making it seem like that this is really important to them. The way that they talked about how they broke down, like, that they really to put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of testing, and this is money, guys. Well, those out there just going, oh, the tests are crap, they're for nothing. You have no idea. I'm not trying to offend you, but you don't really know how business works. They're putting time and effort, which is money. If they didn't care, they wouldn't do it. It's not like they're just like back there just going, well, Lois, we're gonna, it's it's not, that's not the way it works. This isn't a facade, they're not lying to us to, like troll us. Um, so it really does make it seem like that this is really important to them to finally fix this. And maybe the reason why they couldn't fix it is because they didn't have the time. And like Rich said at one point, like they don't want to get to a point where they think it was going well. They spend 2 years building something and then they find out it didn't work well. Maybe that's what was going on in the past. You heard Brian in another live stream say it took them 2 years to build that Battlegrounds update. Imagine things that they've had to do for PvP they wanted to try out. So, I mean, and a few other things like the PvP test, it's only a week. They need to get the data. It's really important that they do get this data. And it does sound like, which makes me feel better. Honestly, it does sound like that they aren't just throwing this at us. I mean, I noticed, even I noticed the comments on the forums where people were just like, hey, like, we're not getting paid to do this. Why should we do this? I don't work for you. Okay. One, you're right. We don't work for Sauce. But two, they do a lot of internal testing. It sounds like they spend a lot of time on this. An effort, but testing this on live is vital for one of the last steps. And what you got to think about what they're doing here. This is gonna be kind of disgusting in a way, but it's like you think of the human body, right? They strip down the human body all the way down to the skeleton. That's what this test is. They stripped it down to the skeleton, and then putting back every organ little by. That's what I'm thinking that they might do. Okay, so depending on how the test goes out, if the test doesn't go out, they'll be like, well, just put everything back in, and we'll think of something else. We'll have to see. But I did write down. And I did want to point one out before I get the timestamps that I wrote down. That communication is really key, and I think that they need to do kind of what they did here, which is, and keep it up, which is, oh yeah, we're aiming for March. We understand things change. I personally, I can't speak for other people, but I personally would rather have them come out and say, the test is going to be end of March. Oh, the PTS exposed the blah blah blah. We're going to push it out until like April. Okay, just communicate that with us. You can give us a date, you can give us information, and if it changes, just update it, just communicate. It's as simple as that. I mean, let's see, 10, you know, sometimes it's like I think they overthink these things. Let's see, I marked 1046, but I don't know if I.
But could you reiterate what the difference is between this test that's currently on PTS and what the test is going to be on live when that goes up?
I guess
Yeah,
I did
for-
kind of jump ahead, didn't I?
That's okay.
all right.
That's okay.
Whoops.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, we need bodies. Like that's the biggest thing, right? Live is the only realm that we can get everybody in there, right? And get the server under load, get the campaigns under PopCap, and get people in there and doing it. So that's why we have to do this test on live.
And that makes sense, right? Does that make sense to everybody? They even talked about using bots, which they have talked about before. This isn't new. For any of you out there going, they never mentioned that before. They have. They have mentioned that they have gone in and they have tried to use bots to replicate the situations and the people of what happens in Cyrodiil, and they just can't. They can't get the information. You know? And I think that that's pretty important. You know, and people get it. That's the reason why this is happening. Okay, another timestamp I did. Let's see. I didn't really.
I mean, everything is simplified. The player power, right, is all flat. It's based off, there's no crazy calculations that go on behind like we currently do. There's no inventory, there's no cosmetics, there's no quests, right? Like we sacrificed a lot to get down to the lowest common denominator to prove out the hypothesis of this test, which is complicated abilities are causing that problem. And we arrived at that, right? We arrived at that because of all the tests we've done previously, right?
So that's another thing that you guys have to realize. Those other tests that we did weren't crap. It was leading to this. This is the next step, right? And in terms of their hypothesis that these abilities are causing the issues and them being complicated and done and blah blah blah, I would actually go further to say I do think that that's the problem. I remember when I played in Lobby, and I've mentioned this a few times, and before things changed, before you could buy guild abilities with crowns and blah blah blah, typically you went into whatever you unlocked, whatever you want, and that meant that you probably didn't, out of your 5 abilities, you probably didn't have 3, 2 or 3 of them. You might not have a morph. You didn't have Mages Guild or Fighters Guild. So there were less calculations, there were less effects, there were less things that the server had to do. And it turns out, we would get up to sometimes all the way up to 3 bars in Lobby back when I played, and we didn't have lag. I'm not even kidding you. It's the reason why I played there for, I think it was a year and a half, is it just reminded me of 2014 where we had these big fights and there were no lag. There was nothing. I was even watching a streamer and he happened to be leveling in PvP. And I guess he had never been in Lobby before. And he was like, he ran into a big battle and he goes, whoa, my abilities work. It's like, yeah, that's the reason. I mean, there's other reasons why people re-roll in Lobby, but that's not for this video. But a lot of the reason why people re-rolled in Lobby was because it worked. It's a place where Cyrodiil worked, and we love the battles. So simplifying it makes sense, and I think it might prove their hypothesis right. And if it's not, I'm assuming they're going in another direction. But this proves that there was other tests weren't just bullshit. It led to this. This is complicated. What they're trying to do, what the info they're trying to get, what they're trying to fix. It's complicated because honestly, it's like 10 years of bullshit. And that's on them. You ever put something off so much that now you're like, oh shit, and you're scrambling? It's kind of that. And that's on ZeniMax. for procrastinating this and putting it off as long as they did. Now, I don't know internally if they, were told to do this because it's not a quote unquote priority. Wouldn't shock me. Corporate world is very cold. They could have gotten hand down from the parent company that said, hey, we're not making money on PvP anyway. Why are you spending money to try to fix it? And they, because the corporate world I doubt a lot of those people even play video games. Microsoft isn't a video game company, right? It's a company. So, and even ZeniMax Media, maybe some of those guys started off a game, but then they, corporate world, and it's just a different world. So they might not understand why we love PvP the way we love PvP. All right.
Which is, looking more into that and re-enabling things and digging into that kind of stuff. If it doesn't go well, then we have a whole other thing that we have to go back and look at. And going well isn't just performance.
In my brain, we were in February and I knew it was
Right.
March. Anyway, yes. Thank you.
I mean, the answer to that is really it depends. And I know that's kind of a cop-out, but like if the test goes extremely well and we get the performance we want, then we have a direction we want to go, right? Which is, looking more into that and re-enabling things and digging into that kind of stuff. If it doesn't go well, then we have a whole other thing that we have to go back and look at. And going well isn't just performance based either, right? Like if players absolutely hate this, we're going to have a think on it. We have to, right? It doesn't make sense to build a thing that everybody hates, which is one of the things I see on the forums a lot and on Reddit a lot is, oh, they're just going to do this anyway. So why would he even care? It's like, well, no, we care about PvP. We want to do it right. We want to get people engaged and happy. This has been one of the #1 complaints about the game for a long time, which is performance isn't good. And all of the stuff we've done up to this point has had an immense impact on improving it, but it's still not where it needs to be. So this is the next step.
Yeah.
And that was very important for them to address too. That, like you said, they're gonna try to if it goes well, they're gonna try to re-implement some stuff, and and if it doesn't, well, then they have to go in a complete other direction. But this again, it just puts down that those other tests did something, and this is on them too. They needed to communicate this. They needed to come out and tell us, hey, these tests were really great. This is going to lead to the next step of the process of fixing Cyrodiil. This isn't a solution, it's a step. It's a next step. We're doing baby steps, and that was very vital of them to do. And the fact that they didn't, I think, is on them, because leaving us in the dark is the #1 thing that screws them over, like hardcore, because nothing that they can tell us is going to be any worse than what we can think of as players. So if they just come out and say, hey, the healing test, it was just a test. We were to get some calculations. It gave us a lot of data, but really not quite where we want to be. The next is a re-architecture, rewrite of code, of base code that's really old, because if you don't know, they started building the game in like 2007, and then, so, that was, and then saying, really kind of communicating, oh, this is just the next step. It gave us a lot of information, but it's not where we want to be. They just stopped communicating right around the time of the re-architecture, to the point where even I was like, what in the living hell is going on? And that really kind of drove me nuts. They need to keep up this communication, because this is great. If they keep this up, I only see them going upwards. But if they fall off again, like they have in the past, it's just going to hurt them. There's too many games out there for anybody to just sit there and dump money into this.
One other question that I see pop up pretty frequently. You may not have an answer for this, and that's okay. I think a lot of players are assuming that, let's say we get the results that we're happy with for this live test, we're just going to move forward, and that's going to be the new Cyrodiil.
With this, the way it is right now, no.
It's
No,
totally
the
not
way
ready.
this is right now,
No.
because again, like we have so much stuff suppressed. You don't get, we still want to allow you.
And I think that that's really important. I wanted to really touch on that too, because I've seen that too. I've seen a lot of people going, "This is gonna suck. This is what Cyrodiil's gonna be like." Da, da, da. And I'm like, no, 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 no. And that's what I've seen when people go talking about class balance. You can't do this. You can't do that. Da 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 da. Da. Nightblade's gonna this. Sork's gonna that. And it's like, this isn't permanent. You guys realize that, right? You guys know that this isn't permanent. I mean, I covered the class, abilities because I knew people would be curious. Hell, I was curious. But I knew going in, none of those changes are permanent. That's not what Sork is going to look like if this test goes well on live. No. They're going to re-implement stuff. They're going to, they're going to put stuff back. That's why I tried to talk to NPCs. That's why I tried to go up to the scribing station. That's why I tried to do it. A lot of stuff is suppressed. They're right. So breathe easy. This is not going to be Cyrodiil. They need information, and I think honestly, if you aren't testing, then you forever have lost your ability to complain about Cyrodiil. In my eyes, I'm sorry. Now, if you're just legitimately busy that week, okay, like I who knows what my schedule's gonna look like, hell. But if you're sitting there going, no, I'm not gonna do it. No, I'm not gonna test now. Then just move on, because you're not helping. You're not. And to be perfectly honest with you, why am I the way I am with this test? Why do I seem like I'm pushing it so hard? Well, because I'm tired, guys. I'm tired of Cyrodiil. I'm tired of Cyrodiil the way it is. Aren't you? I'm so tired of Cyrodiil that I would do just about anything. I would join just about any single test that they would throw at us if it meant getting Cyrodiil back to the way it was from like 2014 to like 2018 or so. It would mean so much. They want to have us test throwing sweet rolls at each other and hitting emotes and dancing with no armor on. Let's go. They want us to jump off keeps and do like 360 line attacks. Let's do it. I don't care at this point. That's why I'm like this. I'm so fed up. It just needs to happen. So I don't know what you guys think. This video is long enough as it is. I don't know what you guys think about this. I think it's a good move forward. I think it was good clarification, but they got to keep up this communication. It's ridiculous. It would just benefit them. I mean, you look at what other companies are doing, like the other videos I've covered with Enshrouded and Keem Games. It's not hard to do stuff like that. We don't need to know everything. We just need to know some things. We need things to chew on. We need to know. When you guys did the re-architecture, I'm talking about ZeniMax. When ZeniMax did the re-architecture code rewrite for Cyrodiil, communication was all about nothing. It's like we were a divorced couple that didn't like each other. It was weird and stupid. So as long as they continue what they're doing now, I only see positive things in their future. They're going to slip up. They're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. As long as they learn from them. And we understand that they're human. So let's get out there. Let's make this test happen. I mean, seriously. It's just dumb that some people aren't going to do it. And they're just being stubborn. I don't have my sets. I don't have my, my class can't do this. I don't have my da-da-da. Oh, quit it. It's a week. All right? It's a week. And if ZeniMax fumbles it, it's on them. It's not on us. We did our part. But we have to do our part. If we don't do our part and we don't give them data, then it's on us. We screwed them. You can sit there and say, we're not paid employees. We're not this. We're not that. You pay to play the game. You want it to run well. They need our help. They're asking for our help. you don't help them, it's on you. Just saying. But if we help them and it doesn't work, you know, and the communication goes away again, and that's on ZeniMax. You know, but if we help them in a third situation, let's put this before I end the video. But if we help them and it doesn't go well, and they get they get the information that means they're going in their hypothesis wrong, but they communicate and say, okay, so we're gonna go in, the data gave us this, and we're gonna go in this direction, and then that's great. Communicate. I'll try to cover also the Q&A. Depends how many questions there are. I'm going to try to do that just to keep you guys informed. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I really do appreciate it. And thank you for watching. And I'll see you in the next video.